and welcome to the Film Threat Podcast. I'm Natalia Winkelman, and this is the third and final podcast out of the Tribeca Film Festival that I'm guest hosting. And today I'm joined by a fellow film threatian.
My name is Chuck Foster.
So this is the final day of Tribeca, thank God. I'm so tired. I keep yawning. And I know that Chuck has seen a million movies, and so I'm going to have him start it off with a lot of the ones that he's seen, because most of them are ones that I haven't talked about yet on this podcast and that I haven't seen yet.
Hi, so yes, I second your tired feeling. I am exhausted. This has been some of the most amazing, or rather an amazing opportunity, and just the amount of work going into this, having done this, I'm like brain dead and can't think. But before I start, I would like to thank the publicists that helped me out tremendously. I am eternally grateful to these folks for having gotten me into the movies that I saw and everything. So Austin, Nathaniel, Sylvia, David, Guillermo, Alice, Dominique, Erica, Courtney, Asil, and Kate, thank you so much for all of your help. I literally could not have done this without you.
The publicists are so great, and the lovely thing about this being, both of us live in New York, but the lovely thing about Tribeca is that a lot of these publicity companies are based here. So around year, we'll see them kind of around at the parties and at the smaller film festivals in New York. So it's not just kind of people that you are going to be interacting with once a year in Park City or something like that. So yeah, thanks to the publicists for being lovely people, and to the folks that are helping out at Tribeca. Anyway, continue please with your movies.
Okay, so this was particularly interesting because they had a virtual reality part this year. I don't know if they've done that in the past, but being able to do that for the first time. I really haven't had a lot of experience with that. A friend put some goggles on me once, but yeah, that was an amazing thing. Right.
I was going to say, are you a big VR guy? Because I'm not. To be honest, I've done the same thing. I've kind of worn those flimsy little brown Google goggles sometimes, which are fun, but I haven't done real hardcore VR almost ever. And I feel like at the festivals, a lot of them are incorporating kind of that sort of tech side more so Tribeca and South by. But yeah, I'm excited to hear about your experience with that.
Right. So the first one was This is Climate Change. It's a 4-part series about climate change. And it's one thing to hear about the glaciers. It's one thing to hear about the fires in California. It's one thing to hear about the famine in Africa. However, to see it up close in your face, with in 3D, and being able to turn around and see it right there, watching the glaciers actually collapse in front of you, it makes an impact. It kind of shows it to you in a way that you wouldn't really get. The only thing that's missing really is the sensation of the temperature. Mm-hmm. You're not at the polar ice cap feeling cold. You're not feeling the heat of the fire on you. But it's dramatic. It's a very dramatic medium in that sense. Yeah. And there was a horror movie I also saw, The Caretaker, and that was pretty fantastic.
Cool.
Yeah, the directors did a great job. It was it's a short film, 13 minutes, but you could tell there was a lot heavy Kubrick influence, sort of Shining crossed with Eyes Wide Shut type of thing going on, and it's a lot of fun. Yeah, I really enjoyed it. I was grateful for that opportunity.
How do you think it's different than movies? Because movies are also a really enveloping experience, obviously. And I'm just curious about how it was, because also you're seeing movies in between these VR experiences, but how does it differ?
Right. So the main thing that I see in this the questions that I've been asking is, how do you first, with a film, a film is going to a movie is a social experience. Even in a 3D movie, you can turn around, you can look around at the audience, you can hear everybody's gas and everything. Doing VR is being by yourself, completely encased in your own world. It's strange. I sort of compare it to the feelies and Brave New World. I'm not saying that it's a bad thing at all, but it's a lot different to be wrapped up and enclosed in your own little space and not know what's going on around you, rather than to, be able to engage in the film with a group.
Right.
And I wonder if this were to be in a group setting, how this would, how that would work. I was talking to a friend of mine. I brought that up. He said, "Yeah, you have no idea what's going on around you. People are picking your pockets and stealing purses while you're up in there." Right. So I see the future of VR halls, and you have lockers underneath your seats. I mean, that's really sort of what you get. Or is this something that you just consume by yourself at home in your room, or on your couch, or whatever? Is this just meant to be in a lone setting, and then you can kind of share it that way? I'm not really sure.
Right. I mean, that's an interesting point, because more and more people are consuming movies and TV on their own, lying in bed with their laptop on their lap. So it's almost it is a similarly solitary experience for a lot of people, which I think is a really special thing about festivals, is that they're drawing a lot of people out of their homes to go see these movies that they aren't going to be able to access maybe for a long time if they don't have distribution yet. Right. So it's interesting also that they're incorporating VR into these festivals, and because it's also a solitary experience, but there's a kind of a community feel, like getting to the festival, the hub, waiting in line. I mean, was there long lines for these VR experiences? I was trying to do a few, and it seemed like it was going to take a while.
I was fortunate. Again, this is where the publicists helped me out a lot. This is Climate Change. I had Dominique and Erica get me. They stuck the goggles on me in an office and said, "Here, have at it." Nice. The caretaker, I got to experience at an actual party for the caretaker. And otherwise, I don't think I would have been able to do it, but I'm incredibly grateful to Alice for hooking that up for me. That was great.
Yeah. Well, bringing it back to movies a little, I guess you can save your favorites for the end, but what are some of the ones that you have enjoyed?
General Magic definitely left an impact on me. It was a documentary about this Silicon Valley tech company. All the rock star programmers from Apple got together to make this new company. The idea is to create a device that would connect everybody across the globe. They were even looking into some wireless things. And ultimately, they created this thing called the Magic Link, and it completely bombed. Mm-hmm. Absolutely just failed. It went nowhere. It was an $800 thing that they thought, Joe Sixpack was going to want. He didn't. And it collapsed. But the people from that company went on to be extremely important. Creators of the iPod, creators of LinkedIn.
Wow.
Basically stuff that we take for granted every day. Even this cell phone that we are recording right now is possible because of innovations made by that company. And actually, this brings about a theme that I noticed throughout this entire festival, which was sort of this rise of the phoenix sort of thing of failure and coming out ahead at the end. And I saw that in every, or at least I interpreted to see it in every film that I saw, that it was almost like, I don't know why, I don't know if it was intentional, but this sort of hopeful, yes, we may be down at one point, but we can always come out ahead at the end.
Do you think that's a a product of this being the Trump era, and so people needing sort of hope. I mean, also the interesting thing about Tribeca Film Festival, this is its 17th year, and it was basically started right after 9/11 as a kind of initiative to rebuild downtown. So Robert De Niro he cites that as one of the driving forces in creating the festival in Tribeca specifically, because they wanted to draw more people back into this area. Also, I should say really briefly that we are recording in the lobby of a hotel, so if you hear any ambient noise or strange violin that I'm hearing right now, that's why. We're surrounded by some other people. But yeah, so that Phoenix idea that you were saying, that actually does seem quite fitting for the festival, and especially for our era right now when people are kind of in need of some hope when they're maybe feeling a little bit hopeless politically.
Right. To answer your question, I do think, hey, it's the liberal media. Or, I'm saying that facetiously, but on
that note, I went to the closing night of the festival last night, and the film was called The Fourth Estate, and it's actually going to be part of a 3-part series. Have you heard about this?
I did hear about it.
Yeah, so it's Liz Garbus's new documentary series, and it's going to play on Showtime as part of a 3-part series. And we watched the first part last night, which covers the first 100 days of the Trump campaign. And it's all focused on the New York Times. So Liz Garbus and her team embedded themselves within the Times, starting the first day of the Trump administration, and just kind of covered the reporters and editors every day at the Times. And not knowing what they were going to find, but knowing that it was probably going to be interesting because this is the historic administration. And I really liked the documentary. I'm kind of a sucker for anything that is journalism based, so it just made me think of that when you said as the liberal media, because I really love that kind of liberal media hagiography. That's like my thing. And I was extremely interested to see how it all worked in the Times specifically. I mean, it's been sort of like this monolithic, powerful presence for ever, but I feel like right now in our Twitter age and our Trump age, you sort of get to know these names of these reporters, specifically like Maggie Haberman or Mark Mazzetti, and so I just was really curious to see what their lives looked like and what they looked like behind the closed doors of the Times.
Interesting. Yeah, I mean, the documentary can be a very powerful tool, to educate. And I think that ultimately the purpose is for education and to, tell people about something that they may not know. And I bring that up because there was one that didn't do that for me, and that was Blowin Up, which I was really looking forward to.
Wow. Yeah, interesting. I heard some good stuff about that, so I'm curious. Okay, well, here's the thing. Not to put you on the spot with your criticism, but
Right, and I knew that this would be like a controversial sort of stance to take, but I mean, and I don't know, maybe I'm an idiot, but I didn't understand a damn thing that I saw in the movie. It was all this direct cinema thing, like cinema verite, just put the camera in the courtroom and let it roll, and I don't know that much about court procedure. I don't know who these people are.
Can you explain what the premise of the documentary is?
Absolutely. So at least what it pertained to be was about this experimental court in New York City that seeks to let me think. They seek to Sorry.
You can tell that it's a bit confusing. Yeah. It's still perplexing you even after having seen it. All that's really come off is that it's cinema verite.
Right, but it's this experimental court that was trying to empower like sex workers, get women away from the control of their pimps, things like that. Now, unfortunately, I really didn't know who any of the people were except for the judge. You know who the judge is. The defense who I thought was the defense attorney, I guess, was some sort of counselor, but it was never really made clear. I guess there was a prosecutor, but I didn't even realize that the whole time. I was looking more for something, I guess, that would teach me about the process of what was going on, rather than just showing me this, being a fly on the wall in the room, which didn't really help me at all. So I came out very confused, not knowing, what anything was really about, who these people were, and why they were doing it.
Are there intercut interviews with the subjects, or is it really just kind of, we're going to follow them around as a fly on the wall?
It was just following them around. There were a few. There was one of the females who I guess was a defendant in the court who gave some rooftop, or I guess a rooftop interview. But she was the only one that was in there really doing that. So really, I didn't learn anything. That was the problem.
Yeah.
I just, it was something that I really wanted to learn about, but I couldn't. So that to me is an issue. If you can't educate me, then I don't know, something went wrong there.
Right. Yeah, and it seems like, ostensibly, the motivation to structure a documentary in that way would be for you to be able to empathize more fully with the characters, so that they don't feel like subjects, but characters, or kind of people that you're meeting, like acquaintances, friends, so that you're just totally embroiled in the story rather than a student learning about them. But yeah, it sounds like the downside of that is when you don't get what's going on, then that is a huge barrier to entry, even more so than kind of a straight didactic documentary.
Yes, absolutely. And then I saw Home and Away, which was sort of the bridge between the two sort of approaches. And that was probably my favorite film of the entire festival.
Oh, wow, yeah.
So...
and what's that one about?
So basically, it's about 3 high school kids that go to Bowie High School in El Paso, Texas. It's right near the border of Mexico. And all 3 of them have different relationships with the border. There's 1 or 2 of the kids actually has to go through customs every day to go to school. They are U.S. citizens, but in order to get to high school, they have to, show their passport to customs at the border and come through every day. It's a regular thing. It focused a lot on how these kids sort of find themselves and really get to know themselves better by playing sports, which, I know that in certain circles that's looked down upon, but when you can really find that element in yourself to really realize what it takes inside of you to progress and move ahead and move forward, it doesn't matter what it is that does that. For some people it's one thing, for others it's another. But in this case, these kids use sports to really move ahead and get out of the situation. It's not an affluent area by any stretch of the imagination. Mm-hmm. So you had one kid who was into soccer, one kid who was into baseball, but to make extra money he was a luchador. And then you had the female who wrestled.
Wow.
And she was getting really ready for it, and as somebody who's into mixed martial arts, I was getting excited, like, is this somebody who's going to be fighting in UFC soon or something like that? So I found that take really interesting.
Yeah, no, that sounds really great. And so that was one of your top of the festival. So it's really it's a good. Yeah.
Yeah. So the reason it was my favorite was director Matt Ogins did just a fantastic job The cinematography was beautiful. I swear I have never seen a documentary that looked this visually beautiful before. I just, the shots were stunning. They didn't need to be for this.
Yeah.
It was, but it just made it a film that kept me engaged, and one way I sort of compare films is what I like to call the sock effect, which is, is there a point in the movie where you just sort of zone out and start thinking about your socks or something,
Yeah.
This one just had me engaged 100% all the way through, so.
Yeah, right. And visuals can so help in that. I mean, people don't, I think that people put a lot of, they place a lot of importance or priority on story, but film is a visual medium. It's the aesthetics are going to either compel you or lose you based on how compelling it looks. So what are some of the others that you really liked?
Well, 9 at 38 was especially interesting, considering what happened recently in Korea. So this is about this musician. He's Juilliard trained violinist who has this dream of having musicians from South Korea and a choir from North Korea perform Beethoven's Ode to Joy, the Ninth Symphony, on opposite sides of the DMZ. And it's a really interesting story of sort of obsession and just dreaming about something that you can't, that may seem unattainable, but ultimately we'll see what happens now with, who knew this was going to happen? Kim Jong-un and the South Korean president shaking hands. That's quite historic, and we'll see if this violinist's dream can actually happen for real.
So it never actually plays out in the documentary. What really happens during the doc?
Well, it's sort of one of these things where he's got the backing. First, he gets the musicians. Then he's got the backing of political people on both sides of the border. And so...
You trying not to give any spoilers?
Yeah, exactly. It's kind of tough.
No, totally. I understand that feeling.
So then, and it looks like everything's going to work.
Okay.
But then...
Obstacles.
Right. Well, something happens, and, one another thing with North Korea being a bully or whatever, and then the musicians start backing out, then the politicians start backing out, and he says, I want to go through with it anyway. And one revelation that I think I can reveal is that this isn't the first time he's done this. He's been trying to do this for 7 years.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. And it has actually come at a great cost to him personally. So
to this violinist. Yes.
Right, exactly. So seeing that, this was a short film documentary, about 18 minutes long, but so much story packed into this 18 minutes. It could have been a feature, honestly. Something that really got into obsession dramatically, I thought.
Yeah, well, I mean, maybe it could. It sounds like this story is kind of ongoing. If he's going to continue with his efforts, unless there is some kind of crazy thing that happens at the end that you shouldn't give away. But yeah, it sounds like this could. I mean, that also is just a really interesting story for the documentarian to have sort of stumbled upon or have found this as this subject.
Right. Because, if you know the history of how this, divide came to be, it's after World War II. It was just basically the country was split by World War II, the way Germany was split. The communists took the north side and the U.S. and the UN took the South Side, and they've had this ongoing battle ever since then. And perhaps the leaders of these countries have been pawns in some greater scheme going on. I'm not really sure. That's beyond my realm of expertise, certainly. But it's now that we have what's going on now, it would be interesting to see how this played out. And it would certainly be interesting to see a follow-up as to where this all ends up. Can this happen now? This was literally a situation where, as the violinist explained, families were torn apart. His father happened to be in the South. His grandmother happened to be in the North. They never saw each other again. Wow. So this is really an opportunity for families to become reunited. We'll see where it happens.
Yeah. That sounds really, really good. Another one I saw, this is just a totally different. I was wondering, did you see Jonathan with Ansel Elgort? I was curious. This is another one that I've seen that I saw yesterday. Than just one that I was curious about talking about. It's a sci-fi, so it's different, which is another sort of running theme in the festival that I've kind of, I guess, after seeing Zoe, which is another kind of the Drake Dormis sci-fi. But Jonathan is about Ansel Elgort plays this man. This is also kind of a spoiler heavy one, so I'm going to have to dance around that. But he plays a man who, he and his brother, who looks exactly like him, also played by Ansel Elgort, sort of take shifts living the life of one person. And so they have to fill each other in on what happened during their shift, so that they say, oh, we ran into that old lady in the elevator, so helped her carry her groceries, so if she smiles at you, it's because I helped her carry her groceries. And they kind of have to, there's inherent tension in that, they want to form a relationship with somebody, but the other one doesn't feel comfortable. They kind of want to live separate lives, but they have to live the same life. I thought it was a very, I really liked the movie. My biggest issue was sort of the ending. I didn't think that the ending was extremely believable, or I felt like it could have came up with something a little bit more smarter, a little bit smarter. Patricia Clarkson plays their specialty doctor, who sort of helps them navigate this weird arrangement, and her character was also kind of a little bit undercooked and fell apart at the end, but otherwise I thought it was a pretty compelling movie, and I really enjoyed it. Yeah.
Well, that sounds very Philip K. Dick, actually. the loss of identity sort of thing. Yeah.
He was citing, he also cited Persona, Sisters. Yeah, so any kind of, all of these sort of sibling dramas. Yeah, they're the classic ones.
Right. No, that sounds fascinating. Wow. That reminds me of a film I saw yesterday called State Like Sleep.
I knew that you'd seen this one. I was going to ask you, but I really wanted to see it.
Brilliant performances. Nice shots, good direction. I thought the story fell flat.
Yeah.
At the end. Sort of what's supposed to be this thriller, this actor who, he's the biggest actor in Belgium. He turns up dead. His wife finds him in their apartment, and then it was purported to be a thriller about her uncovering what really happened, but ultimately you're just kind of going, oh, okay. And to me, it was a shame, missed opportunity to do something really engaging. Mm-hmm. Michael Shannon is great. I actually brought my wife with me last night, and because of him, yeah. She likes him a lot. And
he's a great actor. I love him too. And Catherine Waterston plays the lead, right? And I think she's also really good.
Oh yeah, all of the performances were excellent.
Yeah.
They really were. I did think Michael Shannon was a little underutilized, but otherwise everything was right about it except for the story, I thought. Mm-hmm. And to leave me just going, oh, okay. That doesn't really do anything for me. It's I want to be impacted at the end. I don't want to walk out mediocre, half cooked.
Right. It doesn't have any sci-fi components though, right? It's just kind of a mystery, but it's all set in our world.
Correct. Yeah. No sci-fi elements. There was some connection there, maybe because. Because
of spoilers or something.
No. It's because you said that you had some issues with the other film, and so this was one that I. Again, I was really looking forward to it too. This was one of the big ones, but I don't know, ended up a dud. Whatever. That's what happens. Right.
And I mean, it's tough. It's interesting when they have such a great cast, because that. I mean, I think that automatically elevates the movie no matter what. That's going to get people to see it. I mean, Ansel Elgort's kind of a pull right now, so like that was. I mean, Jonathan had a compelling premise, but I was also kind of like, oh, it's interesting that they have Ansel Elgort in here. And Zoe, this other sci-fi with that Drake Dorman's directed, has, Ewan McGregor and Leah Seydoux and Rashida Jones, and they just were totally underused or misused. I don't know. I didn't think that they did any of them did a particularly great job. Ewan McGregor is like so overwrought throughout the entire film, but I just attribute that to Drake's direction.
Okay.
Yeah.
I see what you mean.
Yeah.
I didn't really get to see any of the science fiction movies that were playing. The closest maybe I came was last night. I saw 7 Stages to Achieve Eternal Bliss by passing through the gateway chosen by the Holy Storch, and yes, I just read that. Yeah. That was pretty phenomenal, I thought. I'm not one who's really that much into comedies. I've seen some that I like and whatnot, but this one was just weird and quirky about this couple who basically find their dream apartment in LA, only it was the place where the leader of a death cult had killed himself, so now his followers break into the apartment to kill themselves in the bathtub, and it just becomes this really hilarious spiral out of control, where at first they're fighting the people coming in, and then they're sort of accepting it as just a normality, and then things just get really crazy. The director, I'd have to look up his name to say it properly. He's an Italian director. From Canada, I believe. He did a great job. The use of colors was fantastic. A lot of pastels, and especially the colors that he used as things were spiraling out of control. Even the skin tones changed as things progressed, and it was really just a lot of fun.
And so that sounds like it was like kind of a comedy or a hybrid or what? Yeah, dramedy.
No, it was a comedy because the way it was played was, it was played funny, kind of more along the lines of something that you'd see on IFC. And honestly, every single person in the movie, from the 1 minute scenes to the entire film, these are people that you see on these IFC comedies all the time. It's like a who's who of contemporary American comedy in this film. Everybody was in it. You recognize all these people, so it was a lot of fun.
I think that definitely, comedy just kind of helps loosen up movies that can feel overly sentimental or dramatic, especially and I keep saying this, but I was really disappointed with Zoe, and I'm not Drake Dorman's his biggest fan, but it just, if they had incorporated like some comedic elements, even dark comedy, I just think it would have cut this feeling of him taking himself so seriously and being like, this is like the saddest romance I've ever created in this like age of high technology. And same with Jonathan, the Ansel Elgort, which I enjoyed. It's just I appreciate when movies find a way to find, like, insert a few laughs in there. And there was like one moment, I think, in Jonathan, and it's Patricia Clarkson's reaction, and like the audience burst out laughing, and I'm not sure if that was even intentional, if they meant that to be a funny moment, but it just really helps break it up, you know?
Right. Well, if you look historically at movies, especially Cameron's movies, what Terminator 2 was on the other day, and Aliens, things like that, they do have these elements. You know, Schwarzenegger says some funny one-liners in Terminator 2, and his reaction of trying to adjust to being a human is slightly comedic. Ripley in Aliens has some great lines. So yeah, you need to balance that out. Even comedies, like if you look at Judd Apatow comedy, they bring you to some very dark places. But it's that balance that needs to work properly. Not everybody, I guess, gets that right off the bat.
Yeah, I think it just really helps build authority for the on the screen. This is the same thing in writing. I mean, if I'm reading a piece of writing, I feel like I just trust the writer more if they're able to incorporate some comedic elements. And I'm not saying that this is necessary. It's not always necessary. Sometimes it's not going to be helpful, but it is just it's a tool that I think that that could be used. I was also thinking of Mother, the Aronofsky film, which I thought was hilarious. I mean, I was laughing out loud. The entire audience that I was with, I was in a screening where everyone thought it was funny, so it was a lot of fun to watch. And then I sent my parents to see it, and I was like, this is a hilarious movie. And they were like, really? It looks really scary. And I was like, no, it's really funny. You'll see it's funny. And they came back and they were like, what are you talking about? That wasn't funny at all. And I was like, but everyone I was with was laughing. So I don't know, maybe it's also kind of depends on the crowd you're with, or like the mood that is evoked in that particular screening, but it can help. I mean, I liked that movie because it was so funny.
Oh yeah, that definitely makes a difference. I remember seeing Cronenberg's The Brood with a crowd, and everybody was just laughing hysterically. Yeah. David Lynch is another one that he bridges that gap pretty well. So, yeah, it's just something that I guess it depends on where you are at the time. I don't know, was Marshall McLuhan right? The medium is the message. I don't know. Maybe it says more about who, the company you're with at the time. Yeah. So.
Yeah, the general mood. What's happened in the news that day or something. Right. Yeah, who knows? Are there any other ones that you want to talk about before we wrap up?
Yes, Backroads definitely left an impact on me. I'm still in that state of it lingering in the back of my mind like a week later. It really stuck with me, made a huge impact on me. It was one of those things like, not at first. I saw it and I went, that was interesting. And then I just could not stop thinking about this movie. It just fascinated me. And the dynamics between the characters, it's directed by Alex Pettyfer. He's an actor. He's done some interesting movies, Elvis and Nixon and stuff like that. But for his directorial debut, he made this really dark, this very stark story that involves child abuse and incest, and yeah, I mean this is a very heavy movie, but even so, building off of what we were just talking about, there are comedic elements in it. Yeah. The character that he plays, Harley, works in a grocery store, and those moments bring you to smile and laugh. There is that, at least that much to break the tension. So he really was onto something here. All the performances in it are fantastic. The cinematography is just claustrophobic and just uncomfortable, and his relationship with his sibling. Basically, okay, I'll talk about the story a little bit. So he's the oldest child of a family where the father was extraordinarily abusive. He was just like a child beater. So his mother goes to jail for murdering the father, and now he's left in charge, and he's just an 18-year-old kid, and he's left in charge of his 3 younger sisters. And one of them is sort of a nymphomaniac, another just seems a little off in a way, and then you have his youngest sister who's this innocent little girl who's just trying to be a little girl. And he gets involved with this older woman who's played by Jennifer Morrison, and another one where everything spirals out of control. There were several premises brought up in the Q&A about why he made certain decisions. I literally woke up the next morning coming up with a 4th one. So that's how big of an impact this movie made on me. I really want to see it again. I loved it.
Yeah. Oh my God, that sounds really, really good. I'm definitely compelled by that. I talked about this in my last podcast, but I don't think you didn't see Little Woods, right?
No.
It was another directorial debut, which just made me think of it, and it won the Nora Ephron Award, the awards were all announced this weekend for the Tribeca for the festival, and I was so happy that it won that award because Nia DaCosta, who wrote and directed it as her first feature, just really deserves it, and I think that she's going to be a super talent moving forward. But I am feeling like I'm about to fall asleep on this couch right now that we're sitting on. We're sitting on these really comfy couches, and I keep yawning. So I think we're going to wrap up and call it for the festival. So this is the third of the 3 Tribeca podcasts that I've hosted. But thank you so much for coming on. And do you want to share your social info so people can follow you if you have a Twitter?
Sure. Let's see. What do we have? Well, there's Twitter, I guess that's a big one these days. So, you would find me at Mr. Freak, which is spelled at MRPHREEK. I know it's a long story. I think on Instagram I'm Chuck Foster 184 or something like that.
That's good. That's good. And you can follow me at Natalia Wink, WINKE, on Twitter and Instagram, and Film Thread on everything. And both my and Chuck's reviews are going to be up on filmthread.com, of course, for more. So, yeah, well, thank you so much for coming on, Chuck.
Thank you for having me. I really appreciate it.
Great. Let's get out of here.